In the same Hollywood Hills home that has been destroyed by landslides and fires, Johnny Mathis, 90, lives alone. He is rapidly losing his memory. He hardly remembers the songs that brought him fame. However, this goes beyond aging. A more sinister tale lies behind his seclusion: covert addictions, enigmatic injections from well-known physicians, and a distressing decision he took in 1956 that continues to trouble him. Contrary to popular belief, Johnny Mathis's latter years are incredibly tragic. When Johnny Mathis was born on September 30, 1935, in the small Texas town of Gilmer, nobody could have predicted that he would go on to become a music icon. Clem and Mildred, his parents, were only trying to make it through. Clem was a handyman as well as a driver. Although Clem had a background, Mildred cleaned homes for affluent white families. He used to sing and play the piano on vaudeville stages in Texas. Racial prejudice slammed the door on his dreams. He was always in pain. Therefore, Clem recognized an opportunity when 3-year-old Johnny began humming "My Blue Heaven." He started teaching his son songs from his own lost history in the hopes that music would hold the secret to something greater. In 1940, when Johnny was 5 years old, the family had left segregated Texas. The Great Migration was one of them, and relocated to Fillmore, San Francisco. Not much was in the new flat. The 7 children lived in a post-street basement flat in a single small room. Outside those walls, however, jazz and soul were thriving in the streets. It was said that the Fillmore was the Harlem of the West. There was music coming out of clubs all day and all night. Johnny absorbed everything. Together with his father, he cut wood to heat their small space. His parents continued to make ends meet by working for wealthy white families, but the air was pulsating with rhythm. Then, when Johnny was only 8 years old in 1943, a miraculous event occurred. Clem somehow saved $25, or around $447 in today's currency. They purchased a used upright piano with that money, but it was too big to fit through the front entrance. In order to rebuild it in their living room, Clem disassembled it piece by piece and moved it inside. Throughout the night, Johnny sat there with wide eyes. He was enchanted by that piano. He never stopped playing. A long time after his parents' weary return from work, that antique piano became the first step on a journey that would see them reach the top of the music charts, and their living room was transformed into a stage. However, Johnny was more than a musician. He had the ability to fly. At George Washington High School, he was only 5 feet 7 inches, but he was able to jump 6 feet 5 inches. It remains a record. His fiercest opponent was none other than the future NBA legend Bill Russell. They were companions. They went together. Newspapers began ranking them side by side as the best in the city by 1954. Only 2 inches separated Johnny's jump from the 1952 Olympic record, and 3 inches separated him from making the 1956 Olympic team, despite the fact that he was ranked number 2 that year. When the Olympic tryout invitation arrived, it seemed fated. A telegram from Columbia Records, however, inviting him to record in New York, also arrived that week. He had to decide between following his passion and competing for Olympic gold. Because of the harshness of the environment around him, it was not an easy decision. Growing up in Texas, Johnny had witnessed firsthand the negative aspects of prejudice. Whites only signs he was denied access, treated as like he didn't belong, and his fame didn't make things better. He was on tour in the 1950s when he received a threat that he would be shot if he ventured to perform in the South. He did not postpone. To avoid being a simple target, he performed chances or while roaming around the stage all the time. He put everything on the line to sing. People sometimes missed that aspect of his narrative. Just being in the spotlight required quiet courage. Before the record deal, in 1954, Johnny received an invitation to the Black Hawk Jazz Club in San Francisco for a Sunday jam session. It was a smoky small venue that featured performances by legends like Dave Brubeck and Miles Davis. When Johnny began to sing, Helen Noga, the club's co-owner, stopped everything, even though he was only 19. What she was hearing, she recognized. That day, she was promoted to his manager. Not only did she not accept no as a response, but she continued. George Avakian, a well-known producer, agreed to see him perform after she contacted Columbia Records. In September of 1955, that took place. The telegram that would alter Johnny's life was already being written by Avakian by the time he finished his second song. "Incredible," he said. Even after Johnny's first recording session in New York in March 1956, he continued to pursue his dream of becoming a teacher. He was pursuing his English and physical education teaching degrees at San Francisco State College. He even rose to the presidency of the student body. However, following the Columbia contract, education had to take a back seat. The music was calling louder, even though it ached to leave. Tryouts for the Olympics took place that same year. Instead, Johnny recorded while he was still in New York. Every time, he pondered what could have occurred if he had made one final leap. In his heart, though, he knew he had made the right choice. His tone had changed. The 6 arduous years of training with Bay Area vocal coach Connie Cox, who took him under her care at the age of 13, had molded it. Because he was unable to pay for lessons, Johnny worked around her house to make ends meet. She gave him instruction in breath control and classical technique. Scope. His voice soared from deep, bass notes to nearly impossible high notes without breaking tone thanks to the tools she gave him. His training made him a singer who comes around only once in a lifetime. Wonderful Wonderful, his debut single, peaked at number 1 on the charts in November 1956. After rising, falling, and rising once more, it spent 39 weeks at number 14 on the Billboard Top 100. However, It's Not For Me to Say was his subsequent hit. Published in February 1957 and broke inside the top 5. He even performed the song on the piano in the movie Lizzie. All of this was happening simultaneously. Columbia boasted in full-page advertisements that, 5 months after its debut, Wonderful Wonderful had become a long-term hit. The industry was then taken aback by a record. Johnny's Greatest Hits album peaked at the top of the charts in 1958. For over 10 years, or 490 consecutive weeks, it remained on the Billboard charts. It was a first for any album. No one, not even Sinatra or Elvis. The sales exceeded 3 million copies. It was the world's first greatest hits album, demonstrating the format's potency. Although it wasn't an easy journey, the music business never forgot it. Johnny discovered the true leader of the organization in 1958 while on tour in large venues such as the Copacabana and Las Vegas clubs. Organized criminal activity. The entertainment sector was mostly under the mob's influence. Additionally, despite being the night's main attraction, Johnny was not allowed to stay at the hotels where he gave performances. The black-only neighborhoods across town were his only option. He was informed bluntly by a club owner, "Oh no, you have to stay over in the colored section." All his parents told him was to keep going. "What the hell? The music is what you're here for," they added. Racism, however, worsened. Death threats continued to come in the South. He was told one night that he would be killed if he went on stage. He therefore took the necessary action. Still, he never stood still and went out there and sang. It was scary. He occasionally couldn't even find a hotel. He took a nap in his automobile. Such fear leaves its mark. However, it didn't alter Johnny. Instead, he let the music speak. Johnny's Heavenly was released in 1959. The record was luscious. Beautifully orchestrated, it quickly sold 500,000 copies. For 5 weeks, it was the number 1 song. It spent 295 weeks in the charts. It went on to become the 5th best-selling record of 1959 and the 7th best-selling album of the decade. Known as Ride on a Rainbow, it peaked at number 10 in the UK. With over 1 million copies sold, it achieved platinum status in 1986. One chilly December in 1958, an odd incident occurred. In the midst of the American rock and roll explosion, a modest vocalist named Johnny Mathis quietly issued a Christmas CD. The record rose to number 3 on the Billboard 200 by the end of that winter, but no one anticipated it would do anything. Every year it remained there. By 1999, 5 million copies had been sold. Not everyone was merely listening to it. They were playing it as if it were a custom every Christmas. Percy Faith's arrangements of songs like Winter Wonderland were more than merely beautiful. The sensation was like to snow falling in your living room. That record was so successful that they followed it up with Sounds of Christmas in 1963, which peaked at number 2 on the new Christmas albums chart and was played annually for 5 years in a row. While the Beatles were tearing up the music industry, Johnny Mathis was quietly establishing a string section and sleigh bell empire. Then there was a night in January 1964. Johnny Mathis took the stage at the Hollywood Palace 2 months prior to the Beatles' electrifying performance on Ed Sullivan. Was Hugh O'Brien's third program, which included Marty Engel and Ginger Rogers as guests. In front of millions, Mathis sung. It was not a chance appearance. It was the crooner's final stand. It was successful. A rival to CBS's Ed Sullivan Show was ABC's Variety Show. Mathis was repeatedly encouraged to return. It demonstrated that even when rock bands dominated national television, his voice could still have an impact. Mathis under pressure in 1967 to either change or vanish. Because Columbia Records encouraged him to update, he took a chance. On October 23, after returning from Mercury Records, he released Up, Up and Away. Something was different. It made a sound. There was folk rock in it. He performed Tim Hardin's Misty Rose and covered Dr. Dolittle tracks. Critics were taken aback. Billboard gave it high marks. In addition to spending 20 weeks on the charts, the album peaked at number 19 on the R&B chart. It demonstrated that Mathis could change while maintaining his soul. Then something that he had not anticipated happened. In 1982, Mathis told a U.S. Weekly reporter, "Homosexuality is a way of life that I've grown accustomed to," in what he thought was a private conversation. It was off the record, he believed. It wasn't. His world shifted the instant the words appeared in the magazine. Death threats kept coming in. Notably from states that lean Republican. The concerts grew risky. His public show announcements had to end. "I'd had enough exposure," he claimed in a 2006 interview, "and I was worried about the consequences." In 1982, that one sentence was almost the end of it. In 1969, he took a risky musical step. He made Romeo and Juliet's love theme available on July 30th. Pop and classical film scores were combined. In addition to selling over 1 million copies, the title tune made it to the Hot 100 and remained on Billboard's easy listening list for 13 weeks. The album peaked at number 52 on the LP chart and remained there for 24 weeks. Before most artists even tried to merge genres, he was doing it. Others in the 1970s were motivated to pursue the same course by it. Then, in 1978, an extraordinary event took place. Mathis and Denise Williams collaborated on the song Too Much, Too Little, Too Late. Since 1957, it was his first #1 single. The span was 21 years. The song reached the top of Record World Singles List, the Hot 100, the Adult Contemporary chart, and the R&B chart. In 1963, he got his last top 10 hit. He had returned after 15 years. The US saw it go gold, while the UK saw it go silver. It wasn't just that duet that saved his career. It started a brand new era of duets with Natalie Cole and Jane Oliver, Warwick Dayan and Night Gladys. He made another bold move in May 1973. In just 3 days, he recorded I'm Coming Home with Tom Bell at Sigma Sound Studios. It had a message in addition to being music. Rejecting phony lives and choosing real ones was the theme of the title track. Drums and bass played train sounds. Floating like landscapes were strings. Despite only peaked at number 115 on the charts, the record had a significant impact. The first ever Producer of the Year Grammy went to Tom Bell at the 17th Annual Grammy Awards. The Spinners even made it to number 18 on the charts by covering the title song. It wasn't simply duets in 1978. It was a huge hit when he published You Light Up My Life that year. On May 2, the record received a gold standard. On July 6, barely 65 days later, it achieved platinum status. In fact, his rendition of the title single sold more copies than Debbie Boone's in some locations. For 24 weeks, the album remained at number 9 on the Billboard charts. It was the best charting record he had released since the early 1960s. What's the cause? The title tune was accompanied by the chart-topping duet with Denise Williams and Bee Gees songs such as How Deep Is Your Love and Emotion. The return was unexpected, but something dark was developing in the background of all the success. Mathis drank excessively during the 1970s. It was terror rather than nerves. He acknowledged that in order to relax before every performance, he drank primarily champagne. When a doctor gave him vitamin shots that were actually amphetamines in the early 1960s, this all began. At venues like the Copacabana, he was performing 5 shows every night while abusing drugs and alcohol. It had all but wrecked him by the 1980s. Then the unexpected occurred. Nancy Reagan, the First Lady, saw him drinking during a White House function. Then she stepped in. She set him up at a Maryland rehab facility run by Jesuits to receive therapy. Afterwards, Mathis claimed that her conduct was the best thing that had ever occurred to him. Together with Jane Oliver, he took the Academy Awards stage on April 9, 1979. They sang the romantic theme song Last Time I Felt Like This from the movie Same Time Next Year. Earlier that year, the song was published and received nominations for both the Oscar and Golden Globes. Even though Donna Summer's Final Dance won, the performance was nonetheless memorable. They had an indisputable chemistry. It reintroduced Mathis to the public eye and resulted him a Grammy nomination. Later, the song was featured on his album The Best Days of My Life, which united music, film, and unadulterated emotion. In 1982, he shocked his admirers once more. He collaborated on the album Friends in Love with Dionne Warwick. It was released in April and had a strong R&B influence. Although some fans were perplexed, the gamble paid off. The title tune remained at number 38 on the Hot 100 for 13 weeks. It revitalized his sound and peaked at number 33 on the Soul Albums chart. It was recorded in California, and Capitol Studios even provided the string arrangements. Not every experiment was successful, but Mathis was once again demonstrating that he wasn't confined to a single genre. His synth-heavy, electronic-heavy album, A Special Part of Me, was published in 1984. Critics disapproved of it. It spent 19 weeks on the charts, peaking at number 157 on Billboard. Nevertheless, almost 500,000 copies were sold. His duet on Love Won't Let Me Wait with Denise Williams, which peaked at number 32 on the R&B chart, was one of the highlights. As well as adult contemporary number 14. The album was mastered at the Mastering Lab after being mixed at Sunset Sound Studios. The UK was more open to it than the US, which didn't fully adopt it. That's where it hit number 45. Then came the headline that nearly put a stop to it all. Not only was that 1982 US magazine article including his homosexuality quote contentious, but it also threatened his career. Dozens of people sent in death threats. His tunes were picked up by radio stations. Venues canceled his performances. Mathis stated in a subsequent interview that it disturbed him that it bothered others. It wasn't odd to him, coming from San Francisco, but it was too much, too soon, for the rest of America. But he didn't disappear. He continued, silently, courageously, and with an unbroken voice. Additionally, he demonstrated his continued significance in 1998 at the age of 63. He published an album called Because You Loved Me, which was in homage to lyricist Diane Warren. 10 of her greatest hits were including the Celine Dion anthem from the movie Up Close and Personal. The album, which was recorded at some of LA's best studios and produced by Umberto Gatica, received 4 stars from critics and served as a reminder that Johnny Mathis still had the ability to stop art with a single note. It was proof, not just sentimentality. Johnny Mathis was unforgettably memorable, still standing and singing decades after his debut. After working for Columbia Records for 47 years, Johnny Mathis was honored with the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2003. He had released almost 73 studio albums by the time he received the award, and that partnership had started in 1956. He rose to prominence as one of music's most renowned vocalists. Through a vote of its national trustees, the Recording Academy bestowed this honor upon him in recognition of his exceptional creative career. He was already a three-time Grammy Hall of Fame inductee. That was in 1998 for Chances Are, Misty in 2002, and It's Not For Me to Say in 2008. His greatest hits album topped Billboard's Top Albums chart for 490 consecutive weeks in 1958. It's been almost 10 years since it fell off. He did an unexpected action at the age of 81. He released Johnny Mathis Sings the Great New American Songbook, his 79th studio album, in 2017. On the jazz charts, it peaked at number 4. Clive Davis and Babyface served as producers. Adele, Pharrell, Leonard Cohen, and Bruno Mars were among the artists included on it. He still had that voice, and people were amazed. His first pop covers album since 1996 featured a duet on Whitney Houston's Run to You with Kenny G. His incredible performance at a pre-Grammy event in 2015 inspired the concept. Mathis continued to push himself until he was in his 80s. Up until 2024, he continued to tour non-stop, performing at around 50 shows annually. In 2015, his home in the Hollywood Hills caught fire while he was performing in Cleveland. The fact that no one was harmed was the most important thing, he said, even after learning about it afterwards. He had spent 56 years in the house. What firefighters could salvage included records, prizes, and even some memorabilia, but everything else was lost. But he continued to perform. Fans even initiated a petition in 2022 for him to be honored by the Kennedy Center, pointing out that he was one of only 5 artists to have top 40 singles in 4 decades. But at last, age caught up. Due to deteriorating memory problems, he declared on March 26, 2025, that he would be retiring from performing. His age was 89. His last performance took place in Englewood, New Jersey, on May 18, 2025. Love and memories suffused the sold-out evening. He sang over 30 songs before concluding, "Do you keep the music playing?" Even reciting sections of songs. The moment was witnessed by celebrities. In his honor, they added his name to the Walk of Fame at the Bergen Performing Arts Center. According to a buddy who accepted the plaque, Mathis sold 375 million records worldwide. The indications had been present. In 2023, admirers remarked on how incredible it was that he could still recall every line. By 2024, however, he required teleprompters. His memory problems quickly got worse as he started the Voice of Romance tour that year. But his voice was still powerful. Even after leaving the stage, he continued to create. Christmas Time Is Here, a brand new holiday album with 10 recently recorded songs, was released by him in October 2023. Together with Kristen Chenoweth, he sang a duet. His CD, Johnny Mathis New Mono, was also published. 22 oldies that have been remastered and added to stereo mixes. He also continued to write new songs despite his health issues. He was joined in those sessions by his longtime partners, Fred Mullen and Jay Landers. Mathis's existence was characterized by survival and adversity. His house in the Hollywood Hills burned down in 2015. The same site experienced a landslip in January 2023, 8 years later, as a result of intense rainfall. The Jaguar of a neighbor was buried beneath the rubble and muck. Wires and pipes had been ripped from the ground. Even at age 87, Mathis was uninjured. He remained in his hilltop home despite the landslide's obvious threat. Since the beginning of the 1960s, the mansion had been a part of his being. He elected to live there by himself, with the help of a few carers, after rebuilding it. He was single and dedicated to music for the majority of his life. He had a strong and secretive personal story. In a 1982 interview with Us Weekly, he remarked nonchalantly, "I'd become accustomed to the way of life that is homosexuality." It was off the record, he believed. It wasn't. The reaction was harsh. After receiving death threats, he stopped discussing his private life. Only in a 2017 interview with CBS did he open up once more. "Like most people," he replied, "I've had boyfriends and girlfriends." He was not a phony. He gave little explanation. That straightforward honesty, however, made him, for many, a silent hero. There was some dark side to his profession. In the 1970s, famous physician Max Jacobson administered amphetamine-laced injections to Mathis. He initially used the shots to get over his laryngitis, but they quickly grew addictive. He also started drinking excessively, particularly champagne. His heart began pounding one evening. That marked a sea change. Nancy Reagan observed him having difficulty during a reception. This made it possible for him to enter the Hay DeGrasse Center in Maryland for treatment. He spent 3 weeks there, and it saved his life. During his early years at the company, he dealt with a lot of challenging managerial situations and legal issues. Nancy Lyons was then accused of controlling his personal life, although those allegations are unfounded. As it turns out, Mathis found stability with Ray Hoffman, who remained with him until 1984, after his initial manager caused him legal issues. Then he took charge of things himself. Even though the strain and continuous touring tired him down, he persisted. It's estimated that Johnny Mathis sold 350 to 375 million recordings by 2025. It was reported that he was worth between $200 million and $400 million. He had a football team in addition to investments in fashion, equities, and restaurants. Additionally, he started a clothing line called Johnny Mathis Seduction. In the same year, he was 90 years old and still living on his own. His health, except for the memory loss that ended his stage career, was unexpectedly stable. And he maintained his kind demeanor throughout. He stated those were just things after the home fire. I am incredibly fortunate. Despite the loss and the waning of attention, Johnny Mathis was the quiet romantic he always was. His speech altered the course of history. But he didn't behave that way. Performed love songs for nearly 70 years. When he was unable to recall every phrase, he realized it was time to stop. Nevertheless, the music continued to follow him even in silence.